Hi, this is Richard Chamberlain. I'm one of the attorneys with the Chamberlain Law Group in Perrysburg, Ohio. Welcome to episode 15 of the Protecting Your Family's Future podcast. The last couple of weeks, we've been working through the questions you need to be asking yourself as you're thinking about what your estate plan should say and do, or as you're thinking about what your current estate plan says and does, and are those still the right things? This week, we're going to be talking about contingent beneficiaries. That is, who would receive your property if your main beneficiaries aren't living at the time property is to be distributed. So a lot of people don't think about this as a planning option. They just think, well, when I pass away, here's who I want my property to be distributed to. But it's possible that those people might not survive you. Let's take an example. For a typical married couple with children, they want their property when they pass away to go to their children. But it is possible that one of those children may not survive them. So who would receive the property in that case? Well, there are several options, and this goes not only if you're leaving your property as your primary beneficiary to your children, but to anybody, whether it's siblings, other individuals, organizations, whatever. You need to think about, who would get the property if those people or those organizations are not around. So as I said, the typical example, you've got property that's to go to your children. If you have children, well, in that case, you might say, well, if one of my children does not survive me, then their share of the estate should go to their children, if they have any children. But if they don't have any children, then the property would go to my other children or their descendants. So that's what we would call like a bloodline distribution. It's going to your children or your grandchildren and down the line. Some people will want to include their children's spouse in that distribution. That's more unusual, but it is possible that if one of your children doesn't survive you, then their share would go to their spouse. You could have the property go to the other beneficiaries on a pro rata basis. Let's say you don't have children and you want to leave 40% of your property to one beneficiary, 30% of the property to another, 20% to a third beneficiary, and 10% to a fourth. Well, if one of those beneficiaries doesn't survive you, you could say, well, divide that person's share on a pro rata basis among the other living beneficiaries. So the percentages, the proportionate shares will stay proportionate, or you could divide it equally among the remaining beneficiaries, whatever you'd like to do. Just know that there are options there to be decided. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't think about is, well, what if, let's say, for example, you have a distribution going to your bloodline, so to your descendants, your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and none of those people are living. We would call that our remote contingent distribution. And it's not very likely, but it is possible, depending on, how many main beneficiaries and contingent beneficiaries you've named. It is possible, and we have seen where none of those people are living. This could be, 15 or 20 or 30 years down the road, and we don't know what would happen. So at some point, you might say, well, if these named people or these intended people aren't living, then divide the property among my heirs as determined under state law. Or you might leave the property to a charity or a group of charities, so that, regardless, there will always be people or organizations who could be identified to receive that property. So as you're thinking about what does your estate plan do or what do you want it to do, you need to think about not only who your beneficiaries will be, but also your contingent beneficiaries. That's important to know as you get into that discussion. So I hope this has been helpful for you today. If you have any questions about your estate planning, you want to reach out to us. Our contact information is in the show notes. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week.